Hey, welcome back to Real Builds Project Have I Lost My Mind? Last we were underneath the chassis and checking everything on the little TR7. So now we need to take the next step real quick and dirty, small project, and that's getting the hubcaps looking like they belong back on the car. Now I got lucky, I poured through all my stuff and I found 4 solid caps, which is excellent. We'll look at them in a second. But let's look at the supplies we're going to need to make these look like they belong on the car. So, first off, sandpaper. I'm going to be using 400 grit and a little bit of 200 grit so I can give them a sand, give them a scuff so that the paints are going to stick well. We're going to give them a coat of primer, then a coat of aluminum finish, which is the closest color I could find to the factory original, and then a couple coats of clear coat. So let's take a look at what we're working with. We're just going to do one. Now these have been thoroughly washed and cleaned so that everything on a face that's going to get painted is in good, nice, clean condition. Now these caps are good, they're solid, but they're definitely not ready to put on the car. So they each need sanded, and we're going to be sanding in everywhere. That way the paint's got a place to adhere properly. So rather than talk about it, we'll dive in a second. We'll do this one first. Now, you'll notice that none of the caps have their Triumph emblems. Well, I've managed to, using a utility knife, work underneath and lift all of the original emblems off. So after they're painted and I give these a little more of a cleanup, we'll be able to put them back into place and they will look like the factory caps, which is the whole idea. The little car we're working on, like I've said probably too many times, is a really nice original car. I want to keep it that way. I want it to look that way, so I'm not getting out of hand. But if you're working on a different kind of car and you want to do something that's a little bit off the wall, you can change the colors, you can do anything. You pick the color, but the technique stays the same. So let's dive in. We just start with the 200 and look for any of the edges that are frayed or damaged. And we need to get it so it's nice and smooth. The primer will fill some imperfections, but the smoother you get it, the better off you are. And just use light pressure. Don't try and grind it in. Just nice, smooth pressure. All the way around, and then start working towards the inside. Now you want to get right down into the nooks and crannies and the edges, because what you're doing is building the place where the paint is going to adhere to. And that's really important because you don't want this coming off. It'll look like really bad. So do it right the first time. It's not hard. It's not physically laborious. You just need to get into it. And then of course the face. And what we're doing is we want to get the scratches out as much as possible. So we just keep working it. Now, particularly, get down into these corners and edges. Okay, right into these. And if it's a different style hubcap, that's okay too. But the same principle. You want to work right down into each and every corner and make sure that you've got them and it's smooth and it's going to work well. And you just keep taking your time, working along through it. I think you get the gist of what we're doing, so rather than bore you to tears, I'm going to switch off and just keep on with the process. and we'll come back when all 4 are done, and it's time to start worrying about colors and paint. But you gotta get right into every one of these little nooks, crannies, and just give it a nice scuff. I'm going over this one because it's one of the worst ones with 200 first, and then I'll go back over it with 400. So we'll talk to you in a few minutes. Now, something we should talk about real quick is what to do if you find a problem. Okay, so for instance here, there's a really fine crack on the hubcap we discovered while we were sanding it. So what we're going to do is scuff it really well here, and then put a couple of layers of crazy glue or an equivalent product, Gorilla Glue, whatever, on it, and let it dry thoroughly on both sides, and then go back and sand it again. Now if you don't do that, chances are when you go to install it's going to crack more, and you want to avoid that. The goal isn't to make these hubcaps look conquerors, it's to make them look like they belong on a really nice original car. So that's the goal. And while I'm applying my glue and doing some more sanding, I'm going to leave you alone and take a break while I get the rest of this work done. Thanks. Now it's such a beautiful day, and it's been so rare lately. I'm going to paint these outside. Now you notice I've got cardboard underneath them all, and they've been washed, dusted off, cleaned. Now if your hubcaps are particularly oily or greasy, what you're going to want to do is get some non-petroleum cleaner like a mineral spirits or something similar, read the labels, and wash them down and get all of that residue off. Even though they look clean, let them dry and rewash them. If you don't, paint's not going to want to stick. So one step at a time. Cleanliness is close to godliness. Everything here is nice and clean and ready to go. So we're going to start putting the first coat on, which is primer. And you do it with light, easy shots. You don't want to go crazy. You want to keep it well shaken. Follow the manufacturer's directions. Now this is also going to show any flaws that you might want to go back and deal with. But nice, easy coats, nothing dramatic. Don't try and pour it on. You're better to do multiple layers than you are one heavy. And just make sure you get everything covered with a nice light first coat. Even in there. There we go. Now there's so many different paints, I don't know who to recommend. I usually buy anything that's a good to decent quality that's on sale, and that does the job for me. You may have a favorite, but follow the manufacturer's directions, and the biggie is nice light coats, let it dry. We'll be back shortly after I do the other 3. Now we've got the first coat on. And what I noticed on this one that we've zeroed in on is at some point it must have got a bunch of oil or WD-40 or something on it that had dried into the plastic. And this is an example of what I'm talking about, what I was talking about. So the other 3 caps are bang on the money, 1 coat's on. This one, once it's thoroughly dry, I'm going to go back, sand out all the imperfections, re-clean it, sand it again, and then start the priming process over. So if you get this, it's not a big deal. Just be patient. Don't rush anything. No point. This is a hobby. Take your time. Do it right. Enjoy it. It's supposed to be fun. When you get a problem like this, don't panic. It's just paint. Go back, clean it, sand it, get it nice and smooth, and then you're back on the table. So until this is dry, and I've rectified this hubcap, as well as put another coat of primer on it, we'll talk to you when that's all done. Thanks. Okay, I know what you're thinking. What the heck is he doing now? Well, pretty simple actually. While I was waiting for the primer on the hubcaps to dry, I looked at the wheels, and they're pretty dirty. The front 2 Also have all the residue built up from that massive oil leak that we repaired. And on the face side, they're also pretty dirty. So, long and short, I've got a few minutes. It's a nice day. I've brought them out. I've soaked both sides with Varsol, and we're just going to give them a cleanup. Now, I'm not going to go nuts. That's why there's hubcaps. But, again, in keeping with the fact we're playing with a really nice original car, we might as well do it right. So now I'm going to tie in with the pressure washer and clean up the wheels. And afterwards, if they're really still scummy, we'll probably give them a paint. Same way as the hubcaps. Okay, we're back to the hubcaps. And we've had 2 coats on each one. We fixed our negligent one that got the bubbling. So they're all on the same page. And we've just applied the first light coat to this one. Now we're going to wind up putting probably 3 or 4 light coats of aluminum finish on these. And again, just like the primer, take your time, light coat, avoid runs, avoid problems. And if it messes up, no problem, let it dry, sand it off, start over. It's not a big deal. And with the supplies I bought, I got more than enough. A couple of cans and you're in business. When this is all done, we're going to go back and give them all a couple coats of clear coat. Then install the name badges and give them another coat of clear coat. So while we're doing that monotonous work, and seeing as we've talked all about it, we're going to let you go. But bear in mind, this is all stuff you can do at home. It's not a big deal. And after these hubcaps were primed the second time and dried, we give them a quick sand, light sand, 400 grit paper so there was an adhesive surface. And now we're just going to, one at a time, one coat at a time, paint them in aluminum finish with 3 or 4 light coats. So we'll talk to you when that part's done. So 3 out of 4 are done. The one that was giving me trouble, I've had to go back and sand and reprime and go through the whole drill, so it'll come a little later. And they look really good. You know, as close to factory as I can get them for original car. I'm sure by the time I drive down our gravel road twice, they'll have imperfections. But we've done the best we can, and that's the important part, right down to the cleaned up original Triumph emblems. You'll also notice behind them, the wheels are all clean. No, I didn't paint them, no point. It looked proper and original that way. But along the way I couldn't resist. I was walking by the car and saw this poor mirror that looked terrible. So I took it off, masked it up and painted it while the other parts were drying. And then of course at the back we have the other set of wheels and tires. The wheels are all cleaned up front and back. They're looking real good. So until I get tires swapped and a few other things, we're going to take a pause. But we've had a good day's work and everything's turned out really well as far as I'm concerned. And it's a nice way to show you what you can do with a Saturday. You know, it makes a huge difference on the car, just straightening out stuff like we did. So till next time, take care from Real Builds. So as I was cleaning up, I thought, you know what, you guys deserve a shot of the before and after. So on the left, we have one of the original hubcaps. It was all cleaned up until we found the cracks. On the right, we have the finished, refurbished hubcap. So it's turned out really good. Even made me feel better about the work I did when I looked at the difference between old and new. So we've come a long ways. Car's going to look great. And we've just got a few more things to do, adjust the door and some stuff like that, and then have to decide what to do with the convertible top. Repair, replace, combination of the two. I guess we'll find out when we get there. Till then, take care from Real Builds.